internal contradiction. So then this book has internal contradictions. Can we agree on that? Although you don't say yes or no answers. What do you say about this internal contradiction?
Hey there, friends. So today's video is a real doozy. We've got Cliff from Ask Questions diving into a conversation with a Muslim student who challenged him on a supposed contradiction in the Bible. Now buckle up, because it gets intense. I mean, did she really come to seek answers, or was she just trying to throw Cliff off track? Well, you'll have to watch and decide for yourself. Let's jump right in, shall we? All right, here we go.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
You said the first thing about taking a book as a proof for your belief. You said no internal contradictions. How well do you know this book? I got this from your friend the other day. It's the Bible for all of you who don't know. I don't know which version it is. I don't know who's writing, who decided what to put it in here. John, we'll read John 1:17, 18. Do you know this one? I'll read what it says here. It says, no one has ever seen God, but God is the one and only who is at the Father's side has made him known. Right here, it says, no one has ever seen God, okay? Mm-hmm. You believe that? You take that? You want to read it? That's your book. This is what you take.
You bet.
Right here, same chapter, John 5:19.
Right.
Jesus, it says here, Jesus gave them this answer. I tell you the truth, the Son can do nothing by himself. He can do only what he sees his Father doing. No one sees, he only does what he sees. Internal contradiction. So then this book has internal contradictions. Can we agree on that? Although you don't say yes or no answers. What do you say about this internal contradiction?
One of the basic principles of interpreting any book is you have to read in context. And obviously, when you read John chapter 1, the main point is Jesus is God in human form. He begins.
But then,
ma'am, am I allowed to answer you or not?
But you're not making sense. You say the same
well, then
thing
why are
over
you
and
wasting
over
your
and
time
over
standing here
again?
talking to me if I'm not making sense?
Because look at all these people here who have questions. There's
Fine, then why don't you let me go on to other people? If I don't make sense, ma'am, why do you waste your time?
Why am I going to let you misguide them with your misguidance?
Oh, I see.
Sit here and
so
use
you have to
logic
sort of be a
and understand
parasite who comes in here and just feeds off the people who are listening to me talk?
Absolutely, why not? You've
Well,
already
that's
made
pretty
a fool
sad.
of yourself.
All right, so firstly, let's talk about what a contradiction actually is. A contradiction is basically when two things are said that can't both be true, they go against each other. But those verses she mentioned from John don't fit that at all. John 1 is clearly establishing Jesus as God, right? So when it says later that Jesus sees God, it's not saying he sees another person. It means he sees himself as the divine Son in human form. I don't think she understands that because in Islam, Jesus isn't God, just a prophet. Also, she wasn't really letting Cliff explain or answer before jumping to the next point. You gotta let people respond properly in a discussion. It's not really a debate if you don't consider the other side's perspective. I think because of her beliefs from Islam, she doesn't want to believe Jesus is divine, so she's trying to prove the Bible wrong. But if she was actually trying to understand, instead of just saying she's right, she would have listened better to his explanation. Does it make sense?
Here anyways.
Why, that's pretty sad. Why can't you just be open and honest and have an honest dialogue?
Let me explain this.
Yep, go ahead. Okay.
Explain this.
Thank you.
Okay.
John chapter 1. John begins with the words, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. Crystal clearly, John 1:1 is stating the deity of Christ. The word there is Christ. The Greek word is logos. Obviously, by reading John 1, you know he's talking about Christ. Obviously, he's hearkening right back to Genesis chapter 1, verse 1, which says, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. John is taking that and putting it in Greek. John 1:1, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. Nobody has seen God. I haven't seen God. You haven't seen God. But the claim of John is, and the claim of Jesus is, that he is God, revealing himself in human form. That's clearly, unmistakably what John 1 is teaching. And you don't have to have a PhD in New Testament. Just read it yourself, and you'll figure that out.
It's both John. I didn't flip to even a different chapter. It's 2 pages away. Both John saying, one saying no one sees God, the other one saying Jesus sees God. Is it saying Jesus sees himself? Is this something that everyone who reads the Bible
that's exactly right. Jesus is claiming to be God, revealing himself in human form. That's his claim.
And he sees himself.
No, you're
Why
not
would
God.
John write that?
You're not God.
Yeah.
What's the difference? Well, if you die and rise from the dead, I will listen very closely to everything you have to say.
Why is that the one thing that you take? Why
Did
don't
you
you
see
take
George Washington inaugurated first president of the United States?
Other people did. I trust that.
Good, and other people saw Christ die on a cross and they saw him risen from the dead.
But they have internal contradictions.
No,
within
there's
their
no
same
contradiction
chapter.
there. We human beings do not see God, but when God chose to become a human being in Jesus Christ, obviously Jesus knew the Father very, very intimately, very, very well.
I just want to take a minute to clear something up here. That she is saying there's a contradiction between those two Bible verses she pointed out, right? But if you think about it properly, there actually isn't any at all. See, the thing is, the Bible wasn't originally written with chapter and verse numbers like we have today. Those were only added much later on to make it easier to understand and navigate through the Word of God. But the writers didn't have that, so you can't just take verses out of context like she's doing. In John chapter 1 verse 1, it's already establishing Jesus as God. Then in John 1:18, no man hath seen God at any time. The only begotten Son, which is in the bosom of the Father, he hath declared him. It talks about him being in the bosom of the Father. Now come on, if you're that close to someone, resting against them, obviously you've seen them, you know, especially when you understand from Christian belief about the Trinity that Jesus is God the Son, who existed with God the Father before he came to earth. So of course he saw the Father. She doesn't get that, so us Muslims don't believe in the Trinity. And John 5:19. Then answered Jesus and said unto them, Verily, verily, I say unto you, the Son can do nothing of himself, but what he seeth the Father do. For what things soever he doeth, these also doeth the Son likewise. Is Jesus saying he only does what he sees the Father doing? Again, that's not contradicting if you understand Jesus is claiming to be the divine Son of God in human form. He sees God because he is God. If we're really talking about contradictions, the Quran is more problematic in this case, because it says we should follow the previous prophets and Gospels, which is what the Bible is made up of. The prophets, Old Testament. The Gospels, New Testament. But then comes Muhammad with another revelation that contradicts the Bible's claim to be God's final word. How does that work? I'm not trying to attack her faith or anything, but if she wants to point fingers at supposed contradictions, she should look at the contradictions in her own text first before nitpicking the Bible. At least try to properly understand what's being said in context. In the end, we're all just trying to understand the truth. But pulling verses out of thin air won't get us there. We need open and respectful dialogue to have these kinds of discussions.